I've got you on the line now.
Hail,
There we
hail, the
go.
gang.
All
All
right, we
right.
good? I think
Yeah, we look
everybody's
like a
on.
couple bumbling fools there for quite some
Oh yeah,
time.
no, of course. I have big breaking news.
All right. What's the
If you
breaking
go
news?
on, if you go on to Pacer and you look at Reggie Wright Sr.'s bond agreement, there is an interlineated line at the bottom of it, which basically says that Reggie Wright Sr. can violate the terms of his bond agreement and the money will be returned.
He can violate his own bond?
Yes, which means that's not a bond at all. They just have to have a piece of paper for the file, which means you got Reggie Wright Sr., who is getting preferential treatment by the U.S. Attorney in Los Angeles, and it needs a big, stinking investigation.
Wow, that's big.
Check it out. You got Pacer.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I'm actually looking at it. Oh, hold on a second. I'm getting an echo back. Ping back echo.
So I posted a video up on my webpage, and Jesse, if you want to, you can pull those. There's two videos on it. You can pull them down and put them up on your page, on your YouTube. I think it's one thing to be calling out corrupt sheriffs, and then we start to call out, well, obviously somebody at the DA's office is corrupt. Already that's pretty risky. Now calling out a U.S. attorney, I would feel more comfortable if people started pulling this video down and putting it up on their own YouTube pages so that it can't be stricken.
Absolutely. Yes. Yeah. If you put it up, I'll be sure to put it up and link a link to it so people can share it. Um, so,
Well, not just share it. I mean, you can actually, download a copy and post it on your YouTube.
okay. Right on. Right on. Yeah, that's huge news. So, what do you take from that? Do you think that maybe he's cutting a deal? I'm sorry, I was doing a lot of the production back here. You can't see.
Thank God we have somebody doing the production. What I think about this is I think this whole thing stinks to high heaven. I mean, here we have Reggie Wright Sr., Reggie Wright Jr., both listed in the Compton Police Corruption Report. There was almost 200 kilos of cocaine that they had identified as having gone missing. That doesn't even include other cocaine that they couldn't find out about. So there was obviously a thriving cocaine trade going on at the Compton Police Department, and both of the Wrights were mentioned in that report. Reggie Wright Sr. always wanted to know the addresses of all of the raids the night before they happened. Why? So they could do the pre-raid, just like they did when they did the raid of in the Tim Brennan affidavit, the gang sweep that netted Orlando Anderson. And then you also have Reggie Wright Jr., who's listed, his phone number is listed in Keefe D's PAO book, which tells us there was a cozy relationship between Reggie Wright Jr. and Keefe D. And is it any wonder that Keefe D gets paraded out and says, oh, yeah, we're the shooters. We killed Tupac.
Oh, I
I mean, it
believe Keith
also,
Davis's words were he was just a witness, and on E1's little plug.
yeah, exactly. So,
Okay.
anyway, so the bottom line with this is we have two highly corrupt people. And Omar Bradley tells us there was absolutely no difference between Death Row Records and the Compton Police Department from the time Suge Knight went to prison and Reggie Wright Jr. took over the record label. They functioned as one entity. And so now we have Reggie Wright Sr. getting extreme preferential treatment, and the corruption probably continued from the 90s all the way through today, and their ties to the Mexican cartels. It's going to be a slap on the wrist, and they put lives in danger. They put the life of Officer Brian Watt in danger. He was shot with a gun that came from the Compton police evidence locker flowed through death row records and flowed to a shooter who shot Officer Brian Watt. These are bad dudes. Both of them were deposed in that case.
Well, I also had some breaking news of myself, and I didn't mean to derail you, Mike, but 313, our guy Terrell from 313, he had Daz on his live stream while the movie was going. And Daz apparently said that the Little Half Dead album cover was their dead homies, and that the Half Dead theory, what he called it, was bullshit. So that's a breaking news flash, is that guilty parties are denying any criminal activity.
Oh, I'm shocked.
Breaking.
I got to go lay down.
I'm sure both of the Wrights are denying that they had anything to do with anything.
Right. Well, apparently when they went to arrest Reggie and Reggie, the feds were told that it was an undercover operation, the sheriff's department undercover operation, and that they shouldn't arrest Reggie because he was part of an undercover operation. That was what was said. And of course, they believed that for all about 30 seconds.
Did they even believe it that long?
No, they didn't believe anything. Hey, listen, real quick too. Okay, about the hat. Okay, I'm getting some dings on the hat. Okay, here's the thing: University of the Hood is a real place. It's a real thing. This isn't a joke. And I'm going to wear the hat when we do these live streams. I'm wearing the hat, not because I'm into big plugs for that, but here's the deal. University of the Hood is a real organization. They're a nonprofit organization down in Compton, and they actually help out with giving kids scholarships and raising money for inner city kids to go to college, to go to school, to get higher education, and get them up out of the hood. And that's what it's called, University of the Hood. It's a real nonprofit organization. They've been around for years and years and years and years. And I met the founder at a get together not long ago, and they are definitely super nice people. And I told them that I would wear the hat to honor their organization for a few shows, and in exchange for that, they're going to give me an honorary degree from the University of the Hood. So hopefully, I'll get my bachelor's degree from the University of the Hood, and I'll be legit that way. So. I saw a couple of people take some shots at it, saying that I don't care about black people, and I couldn't disagree with you more. You can ask my publicist. You can ask a lot of people that know me personally. That's probably the most ludicrous statement of the night. So anyway, that's what's going on with the hat. So we'll just kind of get there, and University of the Hood, shout out, and we'll move forward.
Apparently, we have Daz in the audience. Daz is watching right now. Anything to say to Daz?
Daz Dillinger asked, did Tammy sleep with Reggie to some money from death row? Well, we have documents that show that Tammy, if you're talking about Tammy Hawkins and Reggie Wright were evicted together at the same time. They shared an apartment, so we do know that they were together, and we have documentation to prove that. So I hope that's asked and answered. Just FYI.
I guess my question for Daz would be, if he's watching out there, what I would ask him was what the situation was when you went to visit Suge Knight in prison and told him "fuck you" to his face. If you want to come on the live stream and tell that story, I'd be more than willing to hear it.
Yeah, and then again, are we sure this is the real Daz? I can't say that for sure right now. We'll find out.
Well, and I'd like to know, when he was on the Vlad TV show and he said, hey, we were supposed to go to Vegas, but Snoop said, hold on, don't fuck this up. I just want to know, did that mean to come out, or was that just a slip up?
Yeah, there you go. All right, so let's go over just a couple quick housekeeping things real fast. As you can see, it's a good event when Jesse and Michael and I all get on the channel together and do the show. And welcome to anybody who's new to the broadcast. We do this every week. We start about 5 o'clock Pacific time. We will show one of the movies in our library, and so if you haven't caught it, you can. I was surprised at the number of people who actually haven't seen Tupac Assassination 2. I think it's a gem. It's kind of overlooked in a lot of different ways. But a lot of people haven't seen it, so it was nice to get it out there and see it. But after the movie's over, we do these live streams, and we get everybody on there, and we talk about the things that are important, things that are relevant to the investigation. Occasionally, we sidetrack on derail at a couple of other things. One of those today being a housekeeping item regarding a little bit of a communication problem within the camp. And it affected a couple of people that are working with us and working to help support us. And I wanted to let everybody know, and Michael's here, put a couple of quick rumors to bed. Number one, there's no beef anymore with Tanique. Like I said, there's a big communication problem, big communication errors, breakdowns. That happens when information's flying a million miles a minute and you get too many people involved and everybody's communicating quickly. Words get said that are interpreted the wrong way, and because of that, they these things happen. So, we're glad to get that all resolved. And Tanique, like he said, we're all good. We're fine. Same thing with Terrell. Terrell's been a great asset. 313, a fantastic asset for us. Both are great contributors and super guys for helping out in the cause. So just want to kind of put that all to bed. The other thing is that, Michael, if I owe you any money, I'll get my checkbook out and I'll pay you right now, because the rumor is out there that apparently I owe you a lot of money, and for that I'm sorry.
Well, let's address that, because we've all been accused of living off of a dead rapper. We've all been accused of having profited off of Tupac. And
speaking of profit, I have to do this. Shout out to D Block for his donation. It's bad timing, but I had to say something.
Okay. Well, anyway, bottom line with this is I'm still waiting for the first dollar. And there's been thousands and thousands of dollars invested in this. And so far, no money has come back, at least not anything significant. Chaos Merchants was planned to be released. Russell died. I talked to Sergio Robledo. He told me, he said, get it together, get it out there. I released it, and I released it for free because I just wanted to have the information out there to make everybody safer. We didn't really see much revenue off of Tupac 187, and so far, no money has come from the distributor on Tupac Assassination, Battle for Compton. So, so far, this has not been something that has brought us money. And
right.
You guys can both speak to that.
Yeah, I was gonna jump in on the tail end of that and give everybody kind of a little breakdown about distribution and how it really works. When you care about something and you want to get the word out in different formats, there are ways that you tend to carry over money that you've made. And for example, for Battle for Compton, there's been no money for Battle for Compton because it literally takes 6 months to get pay coming in on a movie. In fact, we're just now starting to even get numbers for how we did during March of this last year. So it takes an incredible amount of time, and then when you do get paid, if you get paid at all, there are reserves, chargebacks, money that's been advanced from production costs, replication costs, and all that. And it's interesting timing to talk about this, because when we talk about Tupac and we talk about Death Row owing Tupac money, there's been an argument made for a long time about how Death Row was ripping off Tupac and all that. And we know that that was true for the most part. But somebody brought a good point, that money from All Eyes on Me was actually only just starting to come in to Death Row Records, because it takes an incredibly long time, 6 months to 9 months to actually see the first check. A lot of people think that the minute the album's out and the minute sales are happening, that somebody's walking a check down to the distributor or walking a check down to the artist and giving them money, and that's just not the case at all. Generally speaking, in distribution agreements, and I've got the actual original distribution agreement that Snoop had with Universal and with Interscope. And one of the things that you got to look at is, generally speaking, there's a quarterly window. that a merchant has to pay a distributor for merchandise. And they can take up to 3 months to pay it. Walmart's one of the worst, and Walmart withholds payment even when they buy large quantities of merchandise, and they withhold payment for 90 days. When they actually do pay the distributor gets it, they put it in their system, and then they sit on it for an additional 90 days. And you ask, why did they do that? Why did they put it out there and hang on to it for 90 days more? The reason is because there are chargebacks and reversals and other costs that are, that come in through the next 90 days. And I don't want to get too complicated or technical about this, but I'll give you a very simple math problem. Walmart, for example, when Tupac Assassination 1 came out, Walmart bought 50,000 copies of the movie at a cost of $10 a pop. And I'm thinking, man, that's it. We're in Fat City at that point. That's their initial order. And you would expect the Walmart to turn around and cut a check for $500,000. If it's 50,000 copies at $10 a copy, that's what they cut a check for. And unfortunately and sadly, you tend to start living like, you're going to be making some serious money. But what happens is when Walmart actually orders that many movies, you have to pay the costs of making that many movies, making and shipping that many movies. So let's say it's $2 a piece to actually replicate and make those DVDs. Now all of a sudden you're $100,000 out of pocket just to make enough movies to send Walmart those 50,000 copies. Then Walmart actually does something very strange. Instead of paying money for the advanced copy and then sending you back what they don't use and charging it back, what Walmart does is Walmart puts it out for 90 days, and then they, whether or not they sell or actively market it, whatever the case might be, they do two things at once. They send you a check for what they've sold, and then they actually deduct themselves all of the other all of the sales that they don't make, and literally ship you back 25,000 copies. So if we sold 25,000 copies of the movie, we've paid for 50,000, and Walmart sends us back 25,000 of it. They don't want to sell it anymore. It doesn't sit on the shelves anymore. Now we've got 25,000 DVDs sitting in the warehouse that we actually had to pay $2 a piece for. So we're at a $50,000 net loss, even if Walmart sells 25,000 copies of the movie. So all of this accounting has to happen all at one point in time. And by the time it's done, it's 6 months before they settle all of that accounting up. And you're lucky if you get a check, because the distributors will often then, after that 90 days, say, well, we're going to hold it in reserve for another 90. So now, what is that, 9 months now? So it really is, it's a screwball game with the distributor and money that's advanced. So when Machiavelli came out, that was months and months before anybody got paid on that. But Tupac had not seen much money at all, if any, from All Eyes on Me by the time that he died.
Yeah, I mean, I operate at a loss every year, so I think the money question is, it's only used by people that try to discredit anyway. I mean, there's questions going on in the chat that they're asking if you believe the theory that you put out. Do you guys want to speak about putting out a theory, why people think you would put out something that you didn't believe? That we've already established that there's no money gain.
What kind of question is that?
I mean, you guys, we believe in this product, and I was going to have you address people that saying you're putting out stuff that you don't even believe.
Well, first off, I'm all about the truth. And whether it's going into border Mexico to find out the truth about Mexican cartel corruption working with the federales, or whether it's the truth of an event in Century City, or if it's the truth of the Tupac and Biggie murders, it's all about the truth. And we look at the metadata. We weren't just coming up with a theory. This theory is supported with the metadata. And the metadata in this happens to be things like what Daz Dillinger brought up about the Little Half Dead album cover. That the metadata is the confession letter. The metadata are the case files. The metadata are eyewitness testimony. And so we look at all that metadata, and we look at it in the context of the actual murders, and then we start to see a picture that emerges. And so, absolutely, this is what happened in these murders.
So I'm just shaking my head at that. Was a great explanation, Michael. Thank you for that. I'm shaking my head at trying to figure out who would possibly believe. We get death threats all the time. We get people clowning on us. We get made fun of in the media. We got people like Greg Kading taking shots at us periodically. Who would do all of this who didn't believe it? Okay, why in the world would we put out? You think any amount of money is worth that? If you do, then clearly you got a lot of time on your hands, because no amount of money is worth what the hassles that you go through when you put out these kinds of documentaries. And if we really didn't believe in what we were doing, none of this would be happening at all.
How do you guys feel about? And I never want this to be a spy versus spy thing, but I think it's a relevant question. How do you guys feel about the silence coming from the murder rap camp after the revelation that Reggie Wright's been under federal investigation for all these years?
Well, I don't ever really speak about competition. I really try and just focus on the metadata and on this murder investigation. And, I don't really care what those guys do. I don't answer their comments. And really, I just try and focus on this investigation. And, if those guys came out with something that I really felt was the truth, I would back and support them 100%. But their theories really fall apart, and it's becoming more and more obvious that that's the case.
Yeah, what's there left to say? There's silence coming from a camp that should have been silent from the very beginning, as far as I'm concerned. My mom used to say, if you don't have anything good to say, don't say anything at all. Well, it's kind of like that. I feel like if you don't have any truth to tell, don't say anything at all. My personal belief is that the entire theory was bullshit. We put it out there in the movie. Their entire story is bullshit, and that the people that try to actively promote that have a fixed agenda. We made that very clear in Assassination. That's how we feel. So the fact that they're not saying anything, what can they say? What is there to really say? Their entire defense to us has been nah. Thank you, Michael, for that one. Has been nah the entire time. So I just can't imagine, what pearls of wisdom, what gem are they going to come up with? You're talking about a team who, Kading's been off the task force that he was in since 2010. That's 7 years. What single new lead, other than an interview with Mob James, has he come up with to do anything to further that investigation theory at all? What single new person? If you think you got the 4 people in the car and they're dead, that's fine. Okay, why don't you interview the people that knew those 4 people that are dead and talk to them about the 4 people that are dead that were in the car? Or why don't you track down, if you think it's a Cadillac and you're so sure where that Cadillac came from and who did it, why don't you interview the person that had the Cadillac or knew the person that knew the person that had the Cadillac? These are all things you can do to help bolster and secure your theory or post up some evidence or information. But in this, and the guy ran around for 2-3 years when he was putting his book out, running around telling the Tupac fan world how much he cared about them and how much he cared about the investigations of Valletta Wallace and Feeney Shakur. And he said how much he cared about it. But if you go back and you look at the man's deeds, all I hear is a bunch of talk, a talk in a TV show. That's what I get, a talk in a TV show. And who made out? Did the fans make out? Did the truth make out? No. Certain people made out because of a television show that they got out of the deal. So, as Tanique would say, peep game, folks. I think that when you look at a man's deeds, we're out there shuffling around. You may not agree with what we're coming up with, but we are coming up with things, and we will continue to keep doing so. So that's it. They've got nothing to say.
Well, and this investigation recently started with interviewing former assistant U.S. attorneys. It started interviewing people down in Compton. It started interviewing people in Las Vegas. We traveled quite a bit. We spent a lot of money and our time to continue this investigation, and we came up with a lot of new information.
Yeah, that's a great point, Michael. I want to piggyback off that for a minute and say that look, if you yourself, let's say they could say, okay, Kading is an ex-cop. There's a lot of people that wouldn't want to talk to an ex-cop, because they don't trust ex-cops or whatever the case might be. Then why don't you hire somebody, or why don't you partner with somebody who can talk to those people, who those people trust, and you partner with that person and you get that person to talk to them. I mean, this is how we reached out to people like Freeway Ricky Ross. We partnered with people that were down in 70th Street in Maine in LA. We partnered with people that knew these people, that could reach out to these people, and we got the interviews that we needed, and we got the information that we needed. So I don't want to hear anybody say that these people, oh, well, he was a cop, so he couldn't exercise. No. If you really are interested in investigating and finding out the truth, you have ways that you access people, and you shouldn't be limited by anything, who you are or what you do. We certainly weren't, and we got some great interviews as a result of it. I think in some cases we got them because we asked.
So for everybody who is watching and doesn't know, we are sitting here with the directors and writers of Tupac Assassination, Battle for Compton. If you guys don't mind, can we take some questions from the crowd?
Sounds good.
Do you guys think that Snoop was finished off in the hospital? That's been a huge question. Snoop? That's been flying around the internet.
Snoop?
Yes.
You said Snoop was finished off in the hospital?
That's Snoop finished Tupac off in the hospital. Forgive me.
So look, I'm really the one that has put forth that theory, and I would just say this: Snoop's bodyguard was former corrupt officer Kevin Gaines. That was Snoop's bodyguard. He showed up with Snoop at the hospital. He was on special assignment for LAPD. He was working for the Internal Affairs branch of the LAPD. He was there from 2 days before until 2 days after. Now, what would have happened if Tupac would have woke up and remembered, or, who shot him? And Tupac was actually improving. He was getting better. So I personally think that he was finished off in the hospital. Now, I had a source come recently and tell me exactly how it went down. I don't know how they know, and that's something that I'm going to share at a later date, but I'm actually going to be talking to somebody in the medical profession to find out if what they said to me about how that went down actually happened. And when I have that more sourced, I am going to break that story.
Hold on. I'm going to say my 2 cents real quick. This shows how shitty the investigation really was. Period. Ask yourself this question: who is the first person that they interview when somebody dies under any kind of unusual circumstances, or under any circumstances? Who's usually the first person that they interview? The last person to see them alive. Okay? And that should tell you how shitty the investigation was, because there was no real effort made at all to interview Snoop about this whole claim that he was the last person to see him alive, and even if he wasn't the exact last person to see him alive, he was certainly one of the more notable people there, especially with the beef that they had going, that went and saw him alive. So the fact that he hasn't even been questioned shows just how shitty the investigation really has been.
Well, and how would that go down? So you have a celebrity that shows up at the bedside of somebody who's supposed to make a recovery, and then all of a sudden everybody wants to go over and see the celebrity, and that provides an opportunity for something to be put into an IV. And that's how simple it could have been. You've got a direct pipeline into somebody's blood when they're sitting in an ICU unit. And so it's not real hard to actually finish somebody off in a hospital.
Fair enough. Good enough answer. I mean, as far as the smoking gun, if people are asking me, I've stated on a video before that I thought it was unlikely that the bullets did enough damage. But I do trust Mike and his word, and if he's got something coming, I'm really excited to see it. Um, I think for those that are asking out there, I'll just take one of these questions. They want to know who killed Tupac, and I think that if you watch Battle for Compton, it will tell you who I think killed Tupac, which is I believe that Reggie Wright Jr. and Sharifa Knight conspired with others to take out Suge Knight, and that Tupac was collateral damage.
Well, I think the confession letter says it. They asked for permission from the gangs to be able to take out Tupac and Suge. And so they knew they were going to get Tupac and Suge in the crosshairs that night. They hired two shooters to take out Suge. One of them had a gun jam. The other one got off two shots. And the one shooter that they hired that was going to take out Tupac was focused on him. And that's why Tupac got more of the damage. And, his gun didn't jam, and he was able to get off whatever 10, 12, 13 rounds. And so that's why you have what happened in this. And it all does seem to make sense. When you look at Chaos Merchants and everything is footnoted from the eyewitness statements, it really becomes harrowing. And the confession letter is what started to make sense. It started to make sense to Russell Poole, who was a 19-and-a-half-year investigator who investigated over 500 homicides, 300 of which he was the lead detective on.
That's a fair point.
I'm sorry. I'm reading comments as you're talking. I'm reading the comments. Mike, you'll see there are pauses here because we're blowing through. People. We got so many great people on right now. Throwing up comments and questions and all that. And so, we try to catch them. It's a moving target. We try to do that. What question did we not answer? I'm just trying to go through here and figure out what question we didn't answer.
Who killed Tupac?
Yeah, who killed Tupac?
Well, I would just say this. I think you have a criminal defense attorney who is able to plan this out, and I think you have a team of military-grade people who have been doing operations for Death Row Records, and that military-grade team turns on the owner of Death Row Records and Tupac, and they're all involved in the murder. It's not just one person. It's not just simply we have somebody that drives by and takes a few shots at Tupac and he's dead. This is coordinated. We had to disarm bodyguards. We had to make sure that we could get them in the intersection. I think there's a likelihood, too, that Las Vegas police or somebody pretending to be Las Vegas police might have been involved. How is it that you pull these guys over and then all of a sudden release them and a minute later they're shot? I mean, this is a military-grade operation with a lot of moving parts. It's not simple, but it is something that happens. There are assassinations that happen all over the world, and there's been a history of it.
I think the only difference is that in this particular military-grade operation, they'd left a couple of dumbasses to actually do the shooting, and it never didn't get done right, and that's something they fixed with the Biggie Smalls killing. Michael calls it an experience modification, and I agree with what that means. But here's the other question. What more do you want? Because, and I'm talking to generally the audience and some of the people that are talking about patents and everything. Look, Kading did an interview with Patents, and as chopped up and edited as it was, he asked them point blank, did you have anything to do with the death of Tupac Shakur? Did you have anything to do with that? Were you even in Las Vegas? They answered the question, and we hired one of the most renowned experts in the world on deception and fraud investigation in terms of body language and whether or not these guys are lying or not. And she came out and said on the record and put her entire professional reputation at stake and said these cats are lying. So what more do you need? If you have the patents, forget the confession letter for a minute. If you have the patents saying, no, I had nothing to do with the death of Tupac Shakur, and they're lying, what more do you want? What more do you need than that? I mean, you ask you who killed Tupac. Why don't you ask them who killed Tupac Shakur? Ask the Patents who killed Tupac Shakur and see what they say. And that's why I keep talking about put them on a lie detector, put them on a polygraph. Let's get these people out there, and at least let's get them to say what they have to say for real, and let's find out. We can solve the whole matter very quickly. But, who killed Tupac? We think we know who killed Tupac, and in fact, I think they admitted they did when they lied about not killing him. Flat out.
Hey, Mike, have you done any research into whether there's paperwork concerning the pull over of Tupac and Suge shortly before the shooting? Was there ever any citations issued?
Well, there were no citations issued, but also you have Chris Carroll, who was the head of the bike cops, who has now come out lying, of course. He says that Tupac said "fuck you" when he pulled him out of the car and all this stuff. It's this big bunch of bullshit that he puts out there. He was the head of the bike cops, so if bike cops pulled him over, he would know. And it's crazy to me when you listen to his story that he really indicts himself in this thing, because we have Frank Alexander, who talks about what happened to Tupac and who did what and who opened the door and all this stuff. And it's in direct conflict with this Chris Carroll, who has now gone around and done the whole media circuit with this bunch of bullshit. And it makes me want to investigate Chris Carroll. Was he involved in Tupac's murder? And is he now involved in covering up Tupac's murder? And one thing I can tell you is that when we interviewed Detective Gordon Martins, he told us, you can get anything in Vegas. Vegas is for sale.
Yeah, I mean, Chris Carroll he used to be a bike cop. Now he was a member of robbery homicide before he left the department. So, clearly he got promoted into a position to be there and move further on the investigation. And so for all of this interest that he has about going around and talking about things, and he's the guy who heard the last words and everything, sure haven't heard him speak much, and nobody's asked him about why he wasn't involved in the investigation if he was that close to it. So you got another character that's full of bullshit.
I smelled a rat as soon as I heard that story. I had a conversation with Frank Alexander where he told me that Tupac's last words were "I can't breathe," as he was being intended to.
By the way,
it's funny. I reached out to Las Vegas police, and they told me that this was their excuse for not investigating Tupac's murder. Sorry.
Yeah, okay. I thought when you said this was their excuse.
That was their excuse.
Oh, okay, got it. Okay, when you said this was their excuse, I was waiting to hear the excuse. But that was their excuse. I got it.
That was their excuse. That Tupac said "fuck you." So, hey, since he said "fuck you" to us, we don't have to investigate his murder.
Fuck his civil rights. He said he dared to say "fuck you" to the police. So fuck his civil rights.
And one thing we know about Russell Poole, even if somebody said "fuck you" to Russell Poole and they were murdered, Russell Poole would have investigated their murder.
Yep, absolutely. Hey, got a comment from Ray Will. Says Pac was the intended victim based on the shots in the car. It was supposed to be Suge theory is trash. I don't believe that at all. Well, first off, welcome to the show, Ray Will. This is a show where we talk about these things, and we don't hate on people because they have a difference of opinion, and we don't block people because they have a difference of opinion. People are welcome to say what they say. Now, let's talk about that for just 2 seconds. Let's indulge that for a minute. I think Jesse came up with the absolute most solid counter to the whole Tupac was the intended victim based on shots in the car. No, actually, the spare tire was the intended victim. If you look at the shots in the car, the spare tire was the intended victim in that shooting. Okay, because if you look at who was the intended target by who got shot and where those bullets hit, the only reason Tupac died was because a random bullet hit off of his pelvis and ricocheted up into his vital organs and killed him. He was not killed by a direct strike to the head or a direct strike to the heart or anything that would have been a strike for him to have been killed. So, they missed Suge Knight. Well, they damn near missed Tupac as well. like I said, they had more shots aimed at the spare tire in the trunk of the car than they did at either one of the so-called intended victims. So, I really don't want to hear any kind of comment like that. I mean, it's fine not to believe the theory that Suge Knight was the intended target, but if your whole basis for saying that Tupac was the intended target by the shots of the car, that's far-fetched, because Tupac would be alive had it not been for a freak ricochet that tore up through his lungs. So you can't say he was the intended target either.
He
So
didn't
who
even
was?
get a direct chest shot. He wasn't even
Right.
shot directly in the chest.
Well, and remind everybody, I mean, he lived 6 days after. And so, it wasn't like those wounds, they didn't even think those wounds were fatal at the time, and everybody thought that he was improving.
Yeah.
And I go back to the confession letter. 2 shooters to take out Suge, 1 shooter to take out Tupac. That's a pretty good plan when you have Tupac on the passenger side of the car and you have the shooters rolling up along the passenger side. So you're doubling up on the shooters to take out the guy that's furthest away. But it turned out to be a flawed plan because they wanted shooters they could cut loose if the shooters got caught, and they made a stupid choice, which, I go back to Reggie Wright. If you're Reggie Wright and you're head of security and you put those guys in the one place where they're the most vulnerable, where they got 6 barricades and they can't get out, and that makes you incompetent as a security person. But if you're Reggie Wright, you put them there and you hire these shooters that miss, and they miss, you're even more incompetent. So we have Reggie Wright Jr., who just is incompetent all the way around.
Yeah, I mean, the follow-up question that Ray Will put out said, so why didn't they pull up on Suge's side of the car then? I'm beginning to think that maybe you haven't seen the movies. Maybe you haven't actually watched and seen how this whole incident went down in terms of the situation there. They couldn't pull up next to Suge's car because there were already physical objects in the way. There's a law of physics that says that 2 physical objects can't occupy the same space. Basically, if there are cars already parked there, you can't just pull up alongside of everybody. And that was sort of the genius of the move, was because there was a turn lane that was open, and that's the only reason they were able to get up on the right side of the vehicle, was because there was a right-hand turn lane that was opened up that they could use to turn there. But all of the other lanes, they were stopped at a red light. That you can't pull up on anybody from any side of the vehicle unless you're actually trying to execute a right-hand turn, and it was one of those 6 places there. So I'd really suggest, Ray, and no offense, but please understand your scenario before you kind of ask these questions, because it does actually, show that if you had seen how it's laid out, that you might understand it a little bit better. But there wasn't a chance for anybody to pull up on anybody and get on Suge's side of the car. So then that would have never have been the possibility, and then have somebody get away. Because what are they going to do? Pull up on the light, pull up, shoot the guys, and then wait for the left-hand turn signal?
And I'd also like to, nobody brings up that the windows were down. One of the bullet holes was found in the windshield dash. So we don't know how many bullets actually went through the windows or not. There's not an exact count of how many shots were fired. And no matter what anybody thinks about shrapnel or bullets, Suge Knight was hit with something. That's not a mystery wound on his head. My personal opinion is, if that would have been a quarter inch to the left, Suge Knight would be a dead man. And if Suge Knight was a dead man, the first person that they would look at would be his wife.
Right, and Adam Barton is right. Well, in a way, because he says, I just don't see the opportunity to disappear in Vegas traffic. How you doing, Adam? Well, that's kind of why we blow apart Keith Davis' whole testimony, that they just happen to be looking in car windows for Tupac and Suge driving through Las Vegas. Sure, if you're in standstill traffic, there's a lot of windows you can look at, but there's no way you're going to make a U-turn in Vegas traffic. So the idea about not seeing the opportunity to disappear in Vegas traffic, yeah, down Koval in that part of Vegas off the Strip, yeah, you can disappear off into oblivion. But especially because that wasn't a real well-lit intersection, not like it is today. But that is kind of the point, that traffic is so heavy on a Vegas fight night that the opportunity that Keith Davis says that they just happen to spot him and make a U-turn that would have been like something in slow motion. I mean, it's almost something like, I keep thinking it's like something in a comedy where they're going to try to make a left-hand turn to make a U-turn in Vegas traffic. 2 hours go by and they haven't moved far enough up into the intersection to actually execute that U-turn. And then when they try to do it, you've got 1,000 other people that have been sitting there for 2 hours going the opposite direction that are stood still, and they're pissed because this Cadillac is trying to execute a left-hand turn and try to cut off all these people at the intersection, and they're all screaming and yelling at him and all that. So it makes it, I mean, the whole theory sounds even more ludicrous when you break it down. But, you know, the traffic in Vegas was definitely a factor.
Well, and you think about it, you know, if there were cops that were involved, and the Chris Carroll statement makes me think that, what if those cops were holding up traffic behind to make traffic thin in that intersection? It would sure make it a lot easier to shoot somebody, wouldn't it? And then for that shooter to get away, you hold up traffic long enough so that traffic in front of the shooter is kind of sparse, and then they can make that turn and get away. And so it makes me think that this is bigger. And RJ was once asked what he thought the biggest piece of evidence we have, and he said Michael Moore's got him. And got him tells me there's radios, there's technical proficiency, there's all kinds of other things.
So it has been confirmed that Daz is watching us. So say hi to Daz. Just want to throw that in there. So we got one of the Dog Pound members watching us, and just the other day he was on watching a 313 show talking about Reggie, and now there's going to be justice for Tupac. I would implore him to give us some information about that if he knows something that we don't. But I just think it's odd that now he thinks that there's going to be justice for Tupac when it comes to Reggie. Maybe that's because all the bullies are gone and people can start talking now.
Well, I can't watch 2 live streams at one time. If Daz has got a live stream and he's asking a bunch of questions, it's kind of like shouting to a TV set. You know, I don't know what questions he's saying we're not answering, but let's get the questions out there into the feed, into the live stream feed so that we can, because, you know, clearly he's on a live stream of his own, watching a live stream. You know, it's so meta, it's kind of funny to me, but let's please, you know, get the question out there. What question are we not answering?
His question is, will Reggie be the Sammy the Bull to Suge Knight's case?
I've been saying that for years. That I've been saying, using that analogy for years, that Reggie's always been Suge's hit guy and Reggie's been his Sammy the Bull. So absolutely, and I think he's going to turn like Sammy the Bull. I absolutely do.
Hey, I just want to give a shout out to Daz. I think you know, he did a lot of great work at Death Row Records, and he's got a lot of standing in the community and a lot of great music. So keep the music
he's talented,
coming.
Talented dude.
Keep the music coming.
We just answered you, Daz. RJ said that he's been saying that for years, that he will roll over on Suge Knight. So to answer your question, Daz, yes, we think that Reggie Wright and Suge Knight, I personally think Reggie Wright and Suge Knight right now are chomping at the bit to snitch on one another to try to cut some deal. And I believe Mike
And that's why.
Go ahead, Mike.
That's why Kenner all of a sudden magically appears in the courtroom, and it's like, I got something to tell you, and I got to get to you. How can I do it? And so, you know, that's what's going on. The theatrics of this are just hysterical.
Yeah, Ben K asked, why was David Kenner like 2 rows back in the court the other day? Well, because Suge Knight wanted to talk to David Kenner about something. The court wasn't letting him talk to David Kenner about something. And I wonder what the two, Suge Knight and David Kenner, would have to talk about, because as everybody knows that was tracking this Suge Knight murder case, Kenner was the first attorney that he had, and he fired him. So, you know, I really don't think it's too much to do with the case. And also, if it was really involving Suge's own case, he could coordinate what he would tell David Kenner through his attorney at the time, and the one that's actually handling his case directly and speaking for him. So that tells me that Suge doesn't want to talk to David Kenner about anything involving his own case. And that would certainly be a clue there.
Well, and Suge had privileges at one point because he was talking to everybody. They were sick of listening to him. He was calling around, and one person that he talked to, well, he had his privileges for this brief time, was Reggie Wright Jr. And then it's funny how his privileges get revoked when Reggie Wright Jr. and Sr. get arrested. All of a sudden, Suge can't talk to anybody again. So that's also very telling.
Yeah, it is. Let's see here.
Daz seems to think that David Kenner is guilty as hell too. You know, I'd
Of course he
really,
is.
I'd love to know what skeletons are hiding in that closet. You know, because
I would just say this: Daz is in a position to know. So if Daz says that, it's not because Daz thinks that; it's because Daz knows that. And he was there. He was at Death Row Records. I wasn't at Death Row Records. I came into this as a Tupac fan, but I came into this as an investigator just looking at metadata. And I would say somebody like Daz, who was at Death Row Records, would know about this and would know all of the bones where they're buried. And it could be that, maybe we have things wrong, and maybe Snoop and Daz and those guys just maybe heard something and they thought something was going to go down, and then it went down. But I think those guys do know what happened.
you know, I say no matter what, the finger that is being pointed right now is at Reggie Wright, and that the finger has been pointed at Mr. Wright for a very long time. That I firmly believe, and I'll say it again, that Reggie Wright Jr. and his wife Sharitha tried to take out Suge Knight, and Tupac was collateral damage. I know that I sound like a broken record saying that, but I firmly believe that. All the evidence that I've seen points in that direction, and I believe that there was a definite divide at Death Row between Dog Pound and Suge's Blood Gang set at the label. I've heard stories from countless people that Tupac, from Lance Pierre, that Tupac was pissed off because he was paying Nate Dogg's child support.
Yeah, actually, somebody sent me the link to the Daz's live stream. Let's verify that it's true. Can we get on it and find out? I'll
He
open
went
look.
on IG Live to prove that it was him in the room.
Okay.
I'm confirming it for you, RJ. It's Daz.
Okay.
Oh, hey,
I just want to make sure we're
think-
talking to the right person.
one of the
I
questions.
think I would just say that I don't think there were a lot of secrets at Death Row Records. I think there were a lot of people talking, and something like this going down, it could be that a lot of people knew it was going to go down.
So let's see here. Yeah, I mean, and to be honest with you, we spend a lot of time doing this stuff. I don't really want to see anybody hijacking the show. He's welcome to his opinions. He's a good musician. I support the fact that he did a lot of great songs, and we've done that. But I'm not going to spend an hour and make this about the Daz show. So let's move on to some questions that don't involve Daz.
Well, one of the questions in the chat early on, before we got to anything else concerning the confession letter, either one of you could tackle this. Why hasn't Chris Blachford come forward about this letter with all the press it's got?
Well, I think I can speak to that. Chris Blachford gave us the letter because Fox News wasn't doing investigative journalism anymore. And Chris Blachford is not at the beginning of his career. He's at the end of his career. He's retired now. He's got, a wife that has health issues. And he just doesn't really want to be involved in this stuff anymore because he wants to go off into retirement and not have anything to do with it. And he's made his statements about it. He handed Russell and RJ the letter back in 2013. He handed me a copy of it in 2014. I was able to verify the story that I heard from RJ and from RJ and from Russell, and that's the end of it. Greg Kading reached out to him and tried to engage him. We put those emails into Tupac 187. So if you want to see what Chris Blachford had to say, it's all documented and it's published in Tupac 187.
Absolutely. And by the way, that quick note on Daz real quick, too. If I sounded harsh, that wasn't intended to say, I'm glad Daz is on the show, man. Thanks for coming. Thanks for being a part of the conversation, man. We really appreciate that, for sure. Again, but like I said, and by the way, if you're doing your own live show, you could come on our show and do our show with us and answer questions, too. So either way works for us. But, we just want to make sure that everybody's kind of staying focused on what's going on here.
Did you have an opinion on Chris Blachford, RJ, or do you want to move on to the next question?
No, Michael nailed it. Michael nailed it on the head. I'd just be repeating what he said because honestly, Chris Blachford's old. He had been working the Compton beat for, better part of 30 years for Fox News. I mean, there's only so much murder and mayhem, especially in the 80s and 90s when, there was murders, 1 or 2 murders every day. Being the local reporter that covered that, there's only so much garbage you want to see. And then there comes a point where you just want to be done with it. Blachford put out a book called The Black Hand. It was about the Mexican mafia. Certainly got a few people's attention, as a kind of a tell-all book there. And I think after you put that out, you've seen it, enough's enough. There comes a point in time where you just walk away and you want to do something happy and you want to do something positive, especially if you spent 30 years reporting on all the human shit that goes on in the neighborhood and Compton and, and you're dealing with that for 30 years. What kind of life is that? I mean, that's why a lot of cops 5-6 months after they retire, they put a gun in their mouth because, there's only so much adjustment you can have when you live with the negativity of human existence for 30 years and you report on these things and you're exposed to this kind of negativity and violence and all that. I think Chris just wanted out of it. He was leaving and he just wanted out of it. I don't think it says anything personally about us, about the letter or anything else. He just wanted out. I don't blame him. Let's see here. Has anyone ever asked Wright, did he in fact tell his security team not to carry their guns that night as Frank and Michael Moore stated? That's from 1TM Productions. Reggie Wright's done several interviews about this, and his stories change depending on what interview he gives. About his reasons for telling people not to carry guns and the styling in which they were told not to carry guns. So, yeah, he has addressed that. I'll kind of leave whatever video you watch of the day as his explanation.
Well, and it's not just Reggie. It's not just Frank Alexander and Michael Moore that have said it. We also independently interviewed Death Row Dave, and Death Row Dave confirmed to us that security was disarmed.
Well, Frank gave me a famous quote. I love telling this story because it's one of the very few Frank stories I actually get. I asked Frank one time in a personal conversation whether, why did you change your story? Well, why was the big shift in story after all these years? Why? And he said, I said, did you really feel threatened? And he said, if you were watching Suge's homeboys kill people, if you knew that they were actually killing people, he said you'd feel threatened too. So I think that's a very real thing, that murders were happening and there were undercover cops at death row. And if people can't make the connection between the dotted lines of the drug startup money from Harry O, and that's been asked a lot in this stream too, to the cocaine distribution in California, that's a big connection, and there were murders taking place. Have you guys heard from Harry O? Do you have any updates? Have you reached out to him?
Actually, I just talked with our publicist who actually knows Harry O personally. I talked to her last week about it, and I'm trying to actually get down to talk to him. He's in prison, and I guess he's out of prison. No, he's in prison. Ed just said he was in prison still. So we're trying to reach out to him.
I'm pretty sure he's out.
Yeah. Either way, I mean, I'll ask Edna because I forgot to ask her where he was. She said he was in San Diego. I was assuming he's still in prison, but Edna knows Harry and has known Harry O for 30 years. So I'm trying to get to her and see if she can hook us up with an interview to answer that question.
To answer Gary Watson's question was, Jmix, did Diddy play any part in this, in your opinion? Other than drive the narrative for the media, I don't believe that Puff Daddy had a hand in the murder of Tupac Shakur. Do you guys?
I don't believe he had a hand in either murder.
And I think that a lot of people ask why he hasn't sued other publications for naming him in the murder. And my opinion on that would be that he wouldn't want to draw any more attention to something that he believes is bullshit. Because most lawsuits come with what's called risk versus reward. How much risk do you have to put out to maybe collect on a bankruptcy? So I don't think it's worth the risk of the publicity for Puff Daddy to go after people who make baseless claims.
I think it's the other way around too. I think the Puff Daddy, everybody's forgotten about him. Nobody remembers who he is anymore, even. And so for him,
and he's crying all the way to the bank about it too.
Well, and for him to get any kind of notoriety over anything and get a headline, he's like just happy that somebody remembers who he is, even if they are blaming him for a murder.
Yeah, I agree, Ray. Well, we're on the same page with the disarming of the guards. We've had several witnesses come forward and say that the security guards were all told, even the cops that were there were told not to carry guns. I mean, there was one, arguably, if you believe Death Row Dave, there were two meetings, one in the morning and then one later in the afternoon, where two different groups of people distinctly were told don't carry weapons. And even the cops that were there were told not to carry weapons. So you are 100%. I think it should is one of those things that's just an absolute certainty. They were told not to carry guns. What I hear are certain changing bullshit stories as to why they were told not to carry guns. And it's all kind of justification and rationalization after the fact. The most common one being that there was an issue with permits and that they weren't allowed to carry guns because there was a permit issue and they didn't have concealed carry permits. Well, Las Vegas is an open carry city and an open carry state. There's only certain places you can't go with an open carry gun. And the bottom line is casinos being one of them. But other than that, it's pretty open. So if Michael Moore wanted to stand outside of a nightclub with a gun, an open carry firearm, that's perfectly legal in the state of Nevada. And that's probably the reason why they couldn't force him not to carry his weapon or threaten him with his job or whatever to not carry his weapon. He carried his weapon because he had an open carry right to carry his gun. And the only people that may have had problems carrying their guns might have been a concealed carry issue. But if they'd all decided to go Wild West and strap them on and leave them hanging out as an open carry, any one of them could have done that. And again, it's, like I said, I've never seen a convincing argument from Reggie or from anybody on the other side of the fence that gives a decent reason why the guards were unarmed, other than just kind of a bunch of bullshit.
There's a pretty good question. If Tupac was collateral damage, then the Orlando Anderson beatdown was coincidence. If the Orlando Anderson beatdown didn't happen, the drive-by still wouldn't have happened. I guess they're trying to connect the dots there.
Well, one thing that I've recently seen about this is Tupac loved to gamble. If he'd have gotten to the casino and would have laid down one bet and won, they'd have never gotten him out of that casino. So, right, you guys have been there. Right at the edge of that casino is where the Orlando Anderson beatdown happened. And I personally think that it was a setup because they were trying to negotiate with Tupac, and that was kind of the story that they told Suge. And so Suge was kind of in on that part of the festivities for the evening. And, I think they didn't want it moved the timetable along. We had to get the timetable to move along, or this wouldn't have happened.
There's a good question. Well, go ahead, Jess.
Well, I think that people are overlooking the radios and the significance of Gotham. I think that if the Orlando Anderson beatdown didn't happen, there was still going to be eyes on Suge and Pac that night. Sorry for interrupting you. Go ahead, RJ.
No worries. No, a fellow by the name of Kenneth McLean is phoning in and has made some pretty astute observations, made some opinions and all that. But, he brought up a salient point that he says, Frank was told he could keep the gun in his car or hotel. Why would he tell security that they could keep guns in their cars but set up the shooting to happen in their cars? Okay, this is like a typical murder rap, Mike Dorsey kind of a statement here. So I see those and I kind of, it's trying to sound like, okay, there's a valid argument here. The reality is, yes, Frank was told to keep his weapon in his car. That was his choice. He could keep his car, keep it in his hotel, because where the hell else are you going to keep it if you're traveling to Vegas? What are you going to go rent a storage facility and put his gun in a storage locker? I mean, there's just, that's all you can do. If you're not going to carry it on your person and you happen to be traveling, where else are you going to put it? But he put it in his car. What you're missing, Kenneth McLean, what you're missing in this is what's called an ambush. An ambush means that somebody is taken by surprise. And because Frank wasn't in the car with Tupac and Suge, when they set up the hit, Suge told Frank, don't ride in the car. Ride in the car behind us. Don't ride in that car. He wanted to be alone with Tupac. He wanted to make sure that Tupac was sequestered for purposes that ranged the gamut. There's 1,000 reasons why, but he did. And ultimately, whether or not Frank would have had his gun, if he had his gun in his car and under the seat, he still wouldn't have been able to, in that short a period of time, do anything to avoid that shooting happening. Why? Because it was an ambush. It was an ambush shooting. So it's kind of an ad hominem argument to say, well, why did it happen? Why did they plan to have in the cars if the security guards were told they could carry their guns? Because in an ambush situation, whether or not Frank had his gun or not, Frank wouldn't have had time to get his gun out from underneath the seat or in the glove box, pull it out before that car was gone. I mean, Mike, how long do you think it took for those shots to be fired and that Cadillac to be out of there? 3 seconds? 4 seconds?
Not very long.
Yeah, I mean, we're talking a matter of seconds getting over the shock and then jumping out of your car. What are you going to do? You're going to do what they claim Buntry did, and that was that you're going to shoot at the back of a Cadillac that's driving away. So having the security guards having their guns in their cars, they could have had an arsenal in their car. They could have a fucking bazooka in their car, and it wouldn't have made any difference because it was an ambush. So
I can empty a Glock 19 in about 15 seconds, accurately. Right. So all this train killer, Baby Lane was this train shooter, Baby Lane was this hardened shooter. If Baby Lane Orlando Anderson would have taken one fucking trip to the range and he was a hardened shooter, this would be a different murder that we're talking about. Whoever shot at that car either did it hastily or wasn't aiming correctly.
Russell had a theory about this because, and we go back to Russell, 500 homicides, 300 of which he was the lead detective. He said that when gangbangers do a shooting, they usually get high beforehand. So these guys were probably, high as kites as they were going through, driving past the BMW and emptying their guns, which may account for why one gun allegedly jammed and the other one only got up 2 rounds. And somebody was very focused and was able to do the majority of the shooting.
I want to answer one. I got to. They want to know if Orlando Anderson was at the bar or not. Corey Edwards says he was. There you go.
Yeah, that's the proof we have. We have a witness statement that he gave to Las Vegas PD, and by the way, refused to recant that statement when Greg Kading tried to get him to recant it. Go read Greg Kading's book, or don't read it, but just believe me, because I don't want you to buy a copy of it. But read his book, and he will tell you they tried like hell to get Corey Edwards to recant that statement, even offered him time off on a federal rap he was facing, and Corey Edwards would not change that statement. So we have an eyewitness statement that told Vegas police they were in a bar, the bar happened. I'm sure if there was security footage or surveillance footage of the bar at that time, that was pretty simple to confirm, and we can't tell whether or not Vegas confirmed it or not, but it was clearly the footage was there, and they would be able to access that shortly after getting that statement. I would think a reasonable cop would do that if somebody said, "Yeah, he was at the bar." Well, let's go get the bar footage and verify it. Okay, that's one of the reasons we think that Vegas didn't think it was Orlando Anderson.
Well, and Russell went to Las Vegas, and he met with those homicide investigators, and that's where they told him that basically Orlando Anderson had been cleared from this. So they weren't going to actually physically come out and give a statement, but this is what Russell learned when he was at Las Vegas.
And to people saying that Corey Edwards was friends with Orlando Anderson, if that's the case, he wasn't friends with Keith Davis, because he had some pretty select things to say about Keith Davis in his statement, including which that Keith Davis went on like a little girl and told stories out of school like a little bitch. It's something to that effect, I'm paraphrasing.
Well, Darnell Brim talked about that. Darnell Brim talked about how Keefy D was always just stirring up trouble. And we've all met him. We've all met the people that, they don't ever get their story straight. They make things up. They stir up trouble. We haven't dealt with any of that, have we?
Okay, well, yeah, and back to Kenneth McLean for a minute, because I'm reading the follow-ups on these things.
You mean Greg Kading?
Yeah, right. No, let's not go there. But here's the thing.
You never know.
McLean, wait a minute. Okay, no, hold on. He says, okay, then what role does Reggie have? Reggie telling them that play in this? It wouldn't have mattered anyways. Well, but you're forgetting one important thing, Mr. McLean. The
Mr.
job
Kagan.
of an assassination crew, the job of people plotting an assassination is number one, first and foremost, to protect the shooters, to protect the assassin. So the first thing you're going to do is try to minimize any risk or any exposure to the assassin at all. So the first thing you tell them to do is don't carry any weapons, or if you want to put it in your car, because it minimizes the exposure to the shooter. Okay, because again, like I said before, just walk it through. What possible other place are they going to tell them? If they say you can't carry your weapon, where are they going to tell them to put it? Put it in a UPS box and ship it home? You know, they have one or two places they can put it. They said that, in fact, I remember this, and I believe we have the interview footage to prove it, that there was actually a healthy discussion about whether or not they were even going to be allowed to put them in their cars. That putting them in their cars was actually a concession that Marcus and Frank came up with Reggie, because he didn't even want to have them in their cars. They said, we need to put them in our cars because when we get to Club 662, we want to be able to have our guns accessible to us. And that was actually a concession that was made. So if you read that backwards, you read the tea leaves there, they didn't even want to have them in the car. They wanted them to be secured back at their hotel room where there was absolutely no threat to the assassin there. So the question about what role does Reggie tell him that, I mean, really? I mean, you know, the first thing they're going to do in assassination is protect the assassin. And that's why I told him not to carry any weapons.
So I would just wonder why Greg Kading continues to cover for Reggie Wright Jr., Reggie Wright Sr., when those guys have federal indictments now. And it's a corrupt cop covering for corrupt cops. I've been told that Kenneth McLean, it's funny that you bring that name up, but the minute you mentioned it, I was told that Kenneth McLean has been trolling the internet lately and that everybody thinks he's Greg Kading. And so why is a corrupt cop continuing to cover for corrupt cops? I just don't understand it.
See,
it would be time for damage control.
It would be. And you know what? People scoffed away the idea of Death Row Records being involved in a drug situation that you guys shown very clearly in Battle for Compton. And now they scoff off the ideas that you guys are just talking about. So what I'm trying to say here, I kind of botched that. But the point that I'm making is if you can't do independent research to verify what you're seeing and you're just going by what you're told, then you're in the dark a little bit, because the things that they are saying in this book, they have been saying since day one that Murder Rap was a book. Well, I've been saying it, at least, that Murder Rap was a book, and it was an investigation funded by LA County to clear corrupt cops. They were being sued by Valletta Wallace, and they picked the D team. They picked cops that were on suspension, that had been suspended. They were picking cops that pointed guns at babies. They were picking losers to make sure that wherever they went, that they weren't going to implicate police. Greg Kading has said this, and just as Mike said that this is a case of a cop covering up for other cops, it's been going on for 10 years, and it's continuing to this day.
Well, and let's look at this, because we had the opportunity, 20 years ago, to uproot this corruption. And instead of uprooting it, we could have, the corrupt Compton police report was sent over to the DA's office. They could have investigated this. They could have put Reggie Jr., Reggie Sr. in prison back then, because they had them. They had them trafficking narcotics. There were plenty of eyewitnesses. There was plenty of metadata, but they decided to sweep this under the rug. And what happens? This comes back to haunt us. And it's a big lesson for humanity that when we uncover police corruption, wherever it is, we need to uproot it. We don't need to, instead of disbanding the corrupt Compton Police Department, what do? They brought it into the sheriffs. And that will go down in history as Sheriff Lee Baca's downfall, was bringing the corruption into the sheriffs. One of those sheriffs ended up bringing Lee Baca down. One of those corrupt Compton Police Department officers who became a sheriff is the one who brought Lee Baca down.
Hey, Jesse, can you pull that picture? I don't know how quick you could probably get it up or show it. Can you pull that picture that was in Tim Brennan's book of the gang of them together at the birthday party?
Oh yeah, all hanging out, enjoying each other.
Can you pull that? Do you
I
have
don't have
that?
that file. I don't have it right
It,
now.
I put it up in a video that I put up on YouTube. So if you guys want to
Good.
watch it, you can see
I
it.
mean,
And
yeah.
what it just shows you, I mean, basically what you have is you have a bunch of people that are all hanging out together, and they just happen to be DAs and judges and corrupt cops, and they are all cozy with each other.
They're partying together.
It shows you. Can you get a fair trial in America? Absolutely not. I do not believe you can get a fair trial in America. Omar Bradley has a trial that starts Monday. They've been pursuing him for 17 years. They got a conviction in 3 years. The conviction was overturned on appeal, and they're still coming after him. And I don't think Omar Bradley can get a fair trial.
Mike, how do you feel? Do you feel that the Reggie Wright Jr. indictment could affect Omar Bradley? Because I've heard rumblings that they might possibly have information on each other. Do you have an opinion on that?
Well, I mean, Omar Bradley knows everything about Reggie Wright Jr. and Sr., but so far the DA's office has been so interested in pursuing him that they have no interest in the information he has on them. And he's had information to bring them down since 1996.
What do you guys think that? Let's address the murders in Compton not being related. A question was asked, and it's by Mr. Crack. Shout out to Mr. Crack.
Shout out to Mr. Crack. Hey,
Mr.
Mr.
Crack
Crack.
15 would
How's
like to
Mr.
know.
Ho?
So the murders in Compton after Pac's death is not related. I would like to give my 2 cents and pass the torch. If you look at the people who were killed in Compton during the alleged gang war after Tupac's death, they were mostly blood gang members in an astonishing number. It wasn't Crips being killed, it was blood gang members. To me, that says internal house cleaning.
So I would just say this. Recently, I had a relative, and I'm not going to get into specifics of who it is, but somebody who is related to Bobby Finch came out to me and kind of sent me a lengthy email about this. Bobby Finch had a meeting less than 48 hours before he was clipped with Keefe D. And so something that Keefe D told him is what got him killed.
Holy shit. RJ, do you care to opine?
No, Michael handled that perfectly. No, Michael handled that beautifully.
You know, I've been spending time with people down in Compton, and you know, the image that has recently surfaced of Reggie Wright Sr. at the MGM Grand, you know, interrogating Orlando Anderson. That's something that came up while Russell was alive. Russell saw that image. He said, "That's Reggie Wright Sr." I went down to Palm Springs. I spent 3 days down in Palm Springs with Russell, brought my computer. We went through the MGM footage with a fine-tooth comb, along with everything, and we were making our preparations for that meeting that Russell went to. And then subsequent to that, I've been spending time down in Compton. I worked on Mar Bradley's campaign. There were 30, 40 people I came in contact with down there. I showed them all that picture, and they all said, "That's Reggie Wright Sr." And so, you know, I just have to say, I'm not an expert when it comes to trying to recognize somebody from, you know, a surveillance tape. That's not what I do. But I've had enough people that knew Reggie Wright Sr., and Russell had sent that out to 2 or 3 of his or 4 of his cop buddies, who all said, "That's Reggie Wright Sr." And so, you know, that pretty much just tells you these guys were involved.
There's a question, Jmix. What do you think about the FBI also following Biggie the night he died? What do I think about it? I want to say this about the federal government. We have a Second Amendment because our forefathers knew that there's going to be times where a government can be so powerful that it could oppress the people. I believe that our government is that powerful. I don't find it funny at all that if the FBI was there the night that Biggie was killed. I mean, we've just seen things like the PRISM program through the Edward Snowden leaks that show us that the government pull us up at any time and spy on us for any reason whatsoever. So what do I think about it? I think it's common, and I think, unfortunately, without anybody actively speaking up on it, it's just going to continue. And if we allow dirty cops to get away with their dirty deeds, and we don't keep pushing for justice, that our future could be just as bleak as possible, because I believe that our government has overstepped itself, and our forefathers saw this coming, hence the Second Amendment.
Well, and I listen, and I'm going to sound a little bit, and I'm going to have to run here in a minute. We've run really long. I'm going to sound a little preachy here, but it is all personal opinion. But, folks, you can't have it both ways. I mean, we're talking about federal overstepping and federal overreaching, but yet all the time I keep hearing people say the FBI needs to get involved. The FBI needs to get involved. The FBI needs to get involved. Well, the truth of the matter is that the people need to be taking care of their own house. People in Compton need to be worried about matters that affect Compton and the Compton government. They should be in charge of their own house. We shouldn't have to rely on some big brother or some higher authority to handle our messes for us. We should be in charge of our own situations and handle our own things instead of pushing it off to somebody else to do it. The reason that I believe federal overstepping has happened is because by necessity, everybody keeps crying, oh, well, they can't handle things, so the FBI's got to do it. Well, that's going to grow the FBI, and the FBI is going to take more power and more authority, and it's in a vicious circle. The more power and authority they take, the more they want people to depend on them, because that keeps them alive. It keeps them busy. So in just my personal opinion, I think if more people actually gave a damn about their own civic situation, that they gave a damn and attended elections. Mike, what was the Compton turnout in elections? I think it was like 12% of all the Compton residents actually voted. It was like 12%. It was dismal.
Are we talking about the people who actually voted, or are we talking
right, yeah, or the stuffed ballots? Right, yeah. Well, there's probably even less, because the total turnout, number of counted ballots, so 12%.
One precinct, there was like 98 people that showed up, and when that precinct was counted at the city clerks, there was something like 475 votes in that ballot box. So I don't think it was a fair and free election. But no. I would just echo what you say about this. It's called just us. Justice is just us.
Yep.
And if we want justice, we have to hold people's feet to the fire. Now, at the start of this broadcast, I broke news about a U.S. attorney who now I think we need to investigate him. He interlineated on the bond for Reggie Wright Sr. that it doesn't matter what violations Reggie Wright Sr. makes, the bond is going to come back to Giles Wright, who is Reggie's brother and a former Compton cop, I think. And so the point being is that if we want to get justice, we have to put people's feet to the fire. We can't let things like this go unchecked. We need to expose it. We need to get it out there. And that's what our job is as journalists or as filmmakers. But it's your job now to take this information and run with it and hold people's feet to the fire and make sure they do their job.
I wanted to address Travon Lane. Someone said that we're sweeping him under the rug. I think that Travon Lane is sweeping himself under the rug. He won't talk. He's not talking.
Yeah.
And you would think
on it.
I'm sorry?
In on it.
See,
Michael's calling from the Grand Canyon, ladies and gentlemen.
Mike's saying that he's in on it. And you know what? That would make sense to me, because if all he did was just whisper in Tupac's ear, hey, that's the guy that stole my chain, why wouldn't he tell people that? What's so sensitive about that information? You have to look at people's motives for not speaking. Sometimes not saying something speaks louder than a million denials in a million words.
So we had a former staff sergeant, reach out to us and talk about convoy security. And this former staff sergeant said the two most important elements in this kind of convoy are the pace vehicles. And the two pace vehicles in this case are K-Dove and Travon. And so when you look at that, they're the ones that are leading the pack. They're in the front. That's why I say in on it. They couldn't have boxed them in without the pace vehicles being in on it. And that's how it works in these types of security issues.
And I will interject, if anything, Reggie couldn't keep his fat mouth shut. If I can give Travon Lane anything, at least he's fucking smart enough to keep his fucking mouth shut. Sorry.
Yeah. Agreed. Hey, I have to run, guys. Let's we'll do this again sometime.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, this is Mr. Mike Carlin from Tupac Assassination Battle for Compton. It's just me and RJ Bond. All right, do you want to take another question before you go, RJ?
Yeah, I do. But before I take a question, I want to say one last thing, actually, and that is to repeat what I said at the beginning. Folks, we're all on one side of the fence here, okay? We are not going to always agree on everything. Michael and I don't always agree on everything. But it's not important that we do. What's important is that we find common ground on the things that we do agree on, and we use that to move forward, because either one of us might change our minds at any given point in time. And it's happened. I mean, it's happened to me so many times I can't begin to tell you. You know, it's a matter of people working together to convince the others that they have some valid thought or have a valid opinion about something or have a fact that might have been overlooked. Nothing is written in stone. And so the message that I really want to put out to the fans, especially with Terrell and Tanique and Michael and myself and Jesse and all these people that are out there knocking it out right now, Mike Fabi, all these guys that are out there. By the way, thank you for monitoring our show again. We appreciate the interdictment there with some of the people that get thrown off for being assholes. But at the end of the day, whether or not you get the facts right or wrong, or we agree on the facts or not, what's important is that we find the common ground that we have and remember the reason that we're doing all of this right now. We're doing all of this because there are some bad people that have gotten away with murder, and they need to be brought in. They need to be brought to justice. And once we get that common understanding back and clear that line of communication, remember why the hell we're here in the first place, then we start to work on the things that we don't agree on. We know the things we agree on. We work on the things we don't agree on. And we try to make compelling arguments to each other to find out if we can move one way or another with the argument. So I want to encourage everybody to remember who the enemy is. Let's remember who the charlatans are. Let's remember who the phonies are, who the fakes are, who the people that just put a bunch of bullshit out and throw shit against the wall just to see if it'll stick. Let's remember who those people are. Okay, and know that those are the people, not our own crew. Those are the people that we need to go after. Those are the people that need to be held accountable because they're filling it up. And, you know, all I could think about last week was they must have been just laughing their asses off at our three-ring circus. And it's sad. It makes me sad. I'm glad that we resolved it because it just didn't catch any of us in our best light. So, you know, I would encourage everybody to support the brothers that are out there pounding the pavement, digging up things. Maybe they're right sometimes, maybe they're wrong sometimes. Doesn't matter. Yes, it matters, but what matters more is that when we find something that we may be a point of disagreement on or a point of divergence, that we work for our personal strengths and keep.
Ooh, you there, RJ? RJ froze. I'll give it a second to see if he comes back. I don't think he's coming back, guys. Well, I guess I'll carry the conversation. I might just be ending this, but I tell you what, if Daz wants to come on this show, I will give Daz a platform. Absolutely will give Daz a platform. Give me 1 second.
Hey, dude, you there?
I am here.
I might have dropped my internet connection or something. I don't know.
Yeah, you did.
Yeah.
But
so,
real quick, Daz said we was bullshit. Well, that's fine. I extend to Daz the invitation that he could come on here and he could have a conversation with me and say whatever he would like. But
yeah, I mean, you know, it's easy to dismiss somebody as bullshit, isn't it? Okay. I mean, you know, from you know, It's easy to dismiss people as bullshit. And I would just encourage people to make sure that their own junk in the trunk is cleared and that they have no inconsistencies in anything that they've said before they start pointing out bullshit to other people. Okay, let's make sure your house is in order before you start throwing rocks. And I don't hear you.
Who is Reese Deese?
I don't know. I don't have a clue. I know that he's somebody that people have decided to put his personal information out on the internet, and I think that's a bunch of horse shit. I don't care how much of a troublemaker you are. I don't think it's appropriate to do that for any reason at all. You can keep your arguments valid. People like to hide behind aliases. If you want to find out who that person really is and you want to get that information out there and let them know that on the back channel, that's one thing. But you don't put it out on the internet. You don't put people's personal information out. You don't go after sons, daughters, brothers, family members. You don't put that shit out there on the internet, period. You just don't. It's just classless.
There's been many times and situations where all of us could have played that card, but someone has to have the higher moral ground, and someone doesn't just have to play the nuh-uh argument. So like I was saying before, just want to reiterate, anytime Daz wants to come on here and talk to someone who knows their shit about death row, who knows stories about him that he probably doesn't know that I know, who's talked to C Style, if he wants to jump on here, I'll talk to him anytime he wants. Shout out to Dave.
Rolex said RJ Bond did a good mannequin challenge because I could just freeze. That was very nice. Very nice. And we got pretty heavy into some shit tonight, which was nice. I mean, it was kind of fun. Let's see here. Yeah, I know. Hey, listen, and I will give Kenny McLean this one thing, Ebony Knowledge. You don't have to be black to have a connection to Tupac. He's an American, and we can all relate to him. Let me explain a fact of life to you, Ebony Knowledge. Most of Tupac's fans, the greater majority of Tupac's fans are white. If you had to look at actual demographics of who bought his album demographically in the 90s, you would probably see a huge demographic skew, at least 50-50. Because you can't sell 24 million of everything and have only one demographic group buying the album. So I really don't. I don't buy that, and I reject that on principle because I'm very involved in the black community. I went to the Black Businessmen's Association awards the other day when I met Quincy Jones. I mean, so tell me I don't care about what's going on in Black of America. Okay, please. Jess, you there?
Yeah, I'm here. I'm just waiting for a good question. I'm gangster, bro. That's funny. Yeah, I think we've had a pretty good stream. It's been an interesting night.
Thanks to Michael Carlin for coming out, straightening out some shit. We don't like to have rumors and conjecture hanging out there amongst the camp. I don't owe Michael Carlin money. Michael doesn't. He hasn't seen anything. Neither have I, because I actually took the money that I was making off the other two movies and actually rolled them and allowed the distributor to hold on to them so that we could pay for the production costs of A Battle for Compton. So, I don't think I've seen a dime for well over a year. So, again, you do that. Will we get paid? Sure, we'll get paid. And hopefully it'll be enough to cover the production costs to get the message out there. But, nobody's buying swimming pools and nobody's, moving to Aruba and living on an island somewhere. It's just, we don't get paid like that.
So thank you to all 500 people that are watching this. Do you got one more question on you, RJ, or no?
Yeah, just hold on. Yeah, I got one more question. Sure. What the hell?
I don't think that's Kading on the MGM tape, just for what anybody wants to say. I don't think it's him. I think that's a bit of a stretch. But if there's some proof, I would like to see it. I have an open mind. I don't see any foul play in the Afeni death that I know of or I've heard of. I haven't looked into it, though.
Okay. There is one here that I think is a good one. Elijah Samala. I guess I hope I didn't butcher the name too much there. Kind of hard. It says Kading presented evidence of the shooters for Tupac and Biggie's murders. However, watching RJ's video doesn't state who the shooter is. Well, that's because you're watching 2 out of 3 movies. This is a 3-part series here. When we did Assassination 2, we didn't know who the shooters were. We weren't sure. We knew who had planned it, and we were working that out. We had some suspicions and some ideas, but we hadn't translated yet to the point of who the trigger men were. We hadn't gotten that granular with it. So to say that, that somehow our movies aren't good, I think you need to watch all 3 movies, because we definitely talk about who the shooters are. And it wouldn't have been, and this is the thing I want to drive home, guys, we wouldn't have known anything about the confession letter had Russ Poole and I not gone to Chris Blachford to fact check other things that we were working on in the investigation. Chris gave us that letter out of the blue. We didn't meet to go get it. He didn't call us and say, hey, I got this new lead I want you guys to check out. Russ and I had actually gone to KTTV News, Fox News, and met with Chris Blachford, because while we were working on the book, which became Tupac 187, we were working on the book, we were going through to make sure that we had some facts checked and make sure that Chris was double checking our facts on a couple of different incidents that had happened during that period of time, because he was the main reporter on the beat. And so we would not have gotten that letter had we not already made the progression from Assassination 1 to Assassination 2 to working on the book. And it was that progression with Reggie and getting all the people that were responsible that allowed us to actually go and explore who the shooters might be. Because, it's easy to pull a shooter like an Orlando Anderson and say, oh, that's the guy, and then try to backfill or try to back explain why. Because he got beat up. Okay, well, there you go. But other than that, you have to work it the right way. You got to find the people that are responsible for it. Usually with law enforcement, we usually catch the guys at the bottom and they give up the people above them. But occasionally, if you can muscle in and get the people that are actually involved in it, they'll give up the lower level fish to get some time shaved off their sentence. And that's what we hope that they'll do, that Reggie might do, or Reggie Sr., or any of them, Suge, any of them might do, is give up information that could be used to lead to an arrest or at least a questioning of somebody that might be involved.
I want to address a topic that just keeps going crazy. The blood. There's no blood on the ground when they pulled Tupac out of the car. There's a shit ton of blood in the BMW. And you guys got to understand that Tupac was shot in the lung. It did go into his lung. When you have a wound to your lung, it causes a sucking of your body. The wound actually sucks blood in. So you'll start bleeding internally instead of externally. Now, the footage that you're seeing of the pavement and the street is low quality footage that was filmed on videotape at night. So, who's to say there wasn't blood on the ground? But even if there wasn't, there's an easy explanation for that. I'll go ahead and let you take the last question, RJ. And I wanted to thank everybody for checking out the live stream. All the love that you've shown RJ and Michael. They worked very hard, and I appreciate it.
I think All Eyes on Me sucked. Let's just put it out there like that. Okay, somebody asked that question.
Hard.
Yeah, it was bad. I mean, anybody that is stupid enough to say that Frank Alexander had an LAPD badge or was flashing an LAPD badge saying he was with LAPD, check your fucking facts. I mean, this is so stupid. But that's it, folks. Thank you again. Thanks for supporting the movies. Thank you for supporting the cause. We will do this again next week, 5 o'clock Pacific time. Stand by. We've got some good stuff for you.
Until Daz, he can come on the show anytime he wants. Goodbye, everybody.